And so do the team, where, as Craig Scarborough delights in saying, fashion meets function. Not quite sure what that means, Scarbs, perhaps. I knew that would be a car right up your street, but nonetheless, it is a car you're quite interested in, right? You quite like this.
Yeah, again,
you always do. You always love the Alpha Tauri.
Yeah, there's a few teams that always kind of turn out something quite nice. I think the Alpha Tauri, the AT03 here, is actually quite an interesting car. It's almost like the kind of the vanilla 2022 car. If you were to kind of sit down and think about how you would design it, where would you exploit different areas, and they've very much done that. And you know, I hope that it works well for them, because you know it's a team that, you know, I think have always kind of been almost but not quite there. You know, just need that extra little jump, and certainly they were looking quite competitive at points last year.
Well, you summed up the Mercedes by saying it was kind of where they need to be, not taking any risks in any areas, just doing the right car for the new regulations with a little bit of imagination in a couple of areas on the pods. So where does this fit in relative to what Mercedes are doing?
I would say this is probably maybe a little bit more on the conservative side. Really? Okay. But I don't think that's massively to the detriment of performance, because I think they've done all the right things in the right way from what I can see. You know, there's nothing on here that you feel is odd. So, like, for example, they've pushed the side pod fronts all the way forward into that regulatory box, which gives you that classic square inlet and flat sides, but then they've got a huge undercut, and they're really working the edge of that floor, and they're getting the inlet throat of the tunnels working really well with that whole front shape that they've got there. And they just package it all up to a high, again, what we call the cannon style exit. It's more of a letterbox actually on this car, a big sort of rectangular box which blows the hot air right out, gets lots of airflow over the diffusers and the beam wing. So again, it kind of everything there adds up quite well. We know that the Honda power unit, there's certainly nothing wrong with that as well. And they're taking the Red Bull gearbox and rear suspension, which is working out quite expensive for them, because you know Red Bull have had to double production. They're actually normally AlphaTauri run a year behind. This year they have to run the gearbox. It's completely different to last year's, so they're running the complete rear end of the Red Bull. But interestingly, now all we've seen so far of this car is a digital render. So everyone was thinking, well, you know, are they hiding the push rods for pull rods? And we know that the Red Bull, which this car is, you know, almost a sister to, is running pull rod at the front. But I've seen pictures, and I know that this is running push rod front suspension, which kind of surprised me, because they've then had to develop that entire suspension package, which also means the springs and the dampers inside the nose, which are all new this year, themselves, when they could have just bought it from Red Bull. So it's slightly odd that they've decided to diverge from their parent team quite so much. But you know, it's not because that they're not able to do that, because obviously they've developed a suspension for years. But on a year when it would be so much easier just to buy in something already developed, they've chosen not to do that.
Yeah, but on the other side of the coin, if it's marginal, it's a marginal decision to be made. If you're Adrian Newey, are you not going to want to see AlphaTauri just doing the alternative just to see how it goes? And if it really is an advantage and works well, I mean, he's going to get feedback, isn't he? So
yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people have put that theory forwards, and it just doesn't strike me as the sort of thing that two teams would sit down and say, well, we're not sure which one of these is going to work, we're going to split out.
No, I'm sure Adrian knows. So, he's sure in his own mind, but he's thinking it wouldn't hurt just to know what the feedback is from AlphaTauri in that respect.
It is, or maybe it's their engineers just digging in and going, we are an independent design team, we're going to run with push rod at the front and work that way. From what we've seen of the Red Bull, it looks broadly similar to this car in general concept. So,
yeah, I was going to say, what have you seen the latest on Red Bull now?
So Red Bull, if you took that as a plain car, the Red Bull will look very much like that. It has the pull rod front suspension, which we were never quite sure which direction they were going to go in. Like Mercedes, they've played with the side pod fronts a little bit, particularly with respect to that mirror mounting. So they've almost kind of got a swoosh inlet to the side pod, which looks very sexy, probably means nothing at all in performance. So we know that that Red Bull is going to be kind of there or thereabouts, because Adrian is very good at reacting to changes in regulations and bringing together ideas from lots of other places into one to get a package working, and that's really where he excels. And we know that he's been focusing, despite his cycling injury last year, which kept him away from.
Despite that injury, yeah, and also we also know that he's been a bit grumpy about the regulations there, and it's not really his scene. This amount of restriction that is there, and so it will be interesting to see the Red Bull in its final form. But let me ask you this question: you are chief designer at AlphaTauri, and one of your aerodynamicists comes to you with what we now see as the Ferrari concept, and your other aerodynamicist comes to you with this concept. Which do you go for?
Oh, that's a big question, isn't it? So I think if they came out with exactly the same figures, you know, give or take, and both looked as though they were going to have some area to develop into, I would go for the conservative choice, because Ferrari,
which is this,
Yeah. And the reason I say that is because with the Ferrari, for example, they've really potentially had to repackage a lot of the car to make them side pods work. If you find that that becomes a dead end, you really are, you know, deep into some design changes. And therefore, I would choose this because it does give you, you know, another diversion on which to go into if you decide that that shape doesn't work. Because generally, the radiators within the side pods are very much the same from team to team. Aston Martin are an outlier, Ferrari are an outlier, but generally over the past few years, everyone's gone the same direction. So there's not a lot to be, you know, gained by, you know, playing about with those areas.
What's the latest on the Honda handover to Red Bull and how that engine program's going?
So this is all getting a little tricky in exactly how you're wording it. So they are now HRC branded. So anyone that's into MotoGP, HRC is Honda's, you know, Racing Development Corporation.
We see the logo on the
classic
car.
Logo. I mean, I've been watching bikes since I was a teenager. Great seeing HRC in Formula One. So it's now a Red Bull Powertrains engine. It is built and maintained by Honda. And that will be all the way through to the end of 2025 when the current powertrain regulations end. Then the next power unit will be, I mean, I say a Red Bull engine. It could be Red Bull partnered with, and the rumours are it will be Porsche or someone like that. But it won't be a Honda engine unless Honda have a change of heart over these next few years. So because of the way the regulations and the homologation and the freeze of spec of these engines, Honda don't have a huge amount of work to do looking after these engines for the next few seasons. You know, they're going to be changing the mappings. Obviously, you're going to have an annual update of the fuel and some other bits and pieces. But really, it's just a case of dyno running. You're not building lots of development parts, development engines. So it's quite cheap for them just to maintain that. And that gives Red Bull and AlphaTauri a good, stable performing engine over these next few years. And again, it's the same situation from the other teams. So as long as they haven't done anything ridiculous over the winter that's lost them performance, and I cannot believe that would be the case. No. Equally, I don't expect anyone else to have done that either. You know, I think that really leaves them in a good stead, and it's going to be down to, you know, the chassis, aerodynamics, suspension, and tyres.